I've worked for the railway company for almost a decade. Mostly night shifts, managing old signal rooms in places people don't even remember anymore. When they reassigned me to Stonebridge Station, I didn't think much of it. The place had been decommissioned for decades, but someone in management said they were testing an old cargo route again, and they needed someone to man the controls just in case. It was supposed to be a simple week-long shift. But Stonebridge wasn't just abandoned, it was forgotten for a reason. The first night was already strange. The walk to the station felt like stepping back in time. Fog hung over the valley like it was hiding something. Stonebridge was buried under moss and years of rot. Everything inside the signal house was dusty, untouched. There were logs dated back to the 1970s still on the desk. But oddly, when I flipped the main panel switch, everything lit up. The signal lights blinked like they had just been used yesterday. The PA system even crackled when I tested it. At exactly 3:04 a.m., the old radio on the desk made a sharp crackle. I thought it was interference until I heard a voice. Inbound from Holloway. I froze. Holloway? That route hadn't been used since the line shut down. I checked the system board. A green signal was active on track 2. Then I heard it, the low rumble of wheels. A whistle distant, eerie. And then, unbelievably, a train pulled into view. The engine was a black steam one. Silent, pristine. It stopped at a platform close to the rear and slid in as if it weighed nothing. The peculiar aspect? According to the signal monitor, Platform 13 is where it stopped. However, there were only 12 platforms at Stonebridge. Too astonished to move, I watched from the window of the signal house. Steam lazily curled into the chilly air as the train sat there. I promise it did not look worn out or rusted. It looked brand new. The doors did not open. No one got off. A few minutes later, as like it had never been there, it withdrew into the fog. The following day, I went back to check the platform. That is when I noticed it. A stone platform with the number 13 welded into an iron pole was hidden behind a rusty fence and dense hedges. Crumbling and overgrown. Neither a map nor a blueprint mentioned it. My supervisor simply laughed when I questioned him about it, saying, "Platform 13? That is not a real location. It is a local ghost story." At night, children would sneak onto Stonebridge and claim to have seen a ghostly train that carried people away. I stayed in the cabin once again that night. The radio came to life at precisely 3:04 a.m. From Holloway inbound. And as before, the black engine came out of the mists and came to a halt at platform 13. I went outside this time, my flashlight hardly piercing the dense atmosphere. One of the doors hissed open as I got closer to the train. Warm golden lamps filled up the space. Chairs made of velvet. Wood that has been polished. It appeared to be from the 1940s. I entered. It was chilly and stale. There was silence. Then I noticed a woman at the far end of the vehicle. Even though it was not pouring, her black outfit was damp and her skin was pale. She stared at me while sitting with her hands clasped. "It is too late to go," she said. I took a step back. The train shook as if it were about to move. Just as the train rumbled gently forward and disappeared into the trees, I turned and jumped off, falling on the gravel. I discovered something new in the logbook the following evening. A new entry. Date, April 26th. Arrival time, 3:04 a.m. Holloway. Collected passenger 0. I had not written it, though. Then the cabin started to transform. The signal panel now prominently displayed the identification for platform 13. That was something I had never seen. Its switches acted in the same way as the others. Then inexplicable things began to happen to me. Faint murmurs in the radio static, footsteps in the corridor while I was by myself, and the distant sound of brakes when no trains were moving. On the 5th night, I stayed indoors. I secured the cabin. However, the door trembled as 3:04 rolled around. There was a knock, but then again, a voice came next. "You witnessed it. It sees you now." I stopped sleeping during the day. Voices yelling from inside enclosed train cars and the sound of steel grinding invaded my dreams. The station was always shrouded in fog. It stuck like cobwebs to the trees even during the day. I called the regional office in desperation to request a reassignment. They did not understand. The man said, "You are no longer on the roster. Stonebridge is not even a current project. It has been months since then. What are you discussing? I am there at the moment." "No," he said slowly in response. The final individual assigned to Stonebridge was... Wait. I heard typing keys. Then there was quiet. His voice trailed off as he added, "Sir, it states that M. Carter was the final operator. Is that you?" "Yes." "So this cannot be correct. It states that in April you were reported missing. It was 4 years ago. That night, the train returned one final time. The woman was on the station waiting for me this time." "You have visited here," she remarked. "You never went away." It was dead silent in the station. I could only see 5 feet in front of me due to the dense fog. The doors of the train opened. The lamps gleamed inside. I trodden on it. The doors shut. Not a whistle. No steam. No hum from the engine. Nothing but quiet. And movement. My reflection, motionless and staring back at me with vacant eyes, was the last thing I saw before the windows went black. Stonebridge Station is still not open. It is no longer visited. However, others claim that you can still hear a train passing through the valley on the coldest nights when the hills are covered in mist. Additionally, if you ever spot Platform 13, avoid getting on board, because only souls who are unaware that they have already left are carried by that train. Story number 2. It was intended to be a standard examination of abandoned stations for my architecture thesis, which examined deteriorating infrastructure. Since there was not much information available, I had chosen East Ravenlock Station, a little station nestled in the hills. The internet images were old and hazy. Only hazy coordinates were provided on the maps. When I questioned, the majority of the locals did not even acknowledge it. "That place never lets you leave the same," remarked one man at the diner outside of town. It was in the middle of October. By the time I located the dirt road leading to the station, the trees were skeleton and everything was saturated from a cold drizzle. I had to walk the final half-mile with my boots sucking from the mud since my automobile could not go any farther. Then I noticed it. A wooden signal cabin slouched in the corner, its windows spiderwebbed with cracks, and 2 stone platforms, rotting benches, and broken lighting made East Ravenlock Station appear like a skeleton in the fog. The thing that disturbed me the most, though, was how kept it was. No trash, no graffiti, and no indications of trespassing. It was unaltered, as if it had been waiting. I put up my camera inside the station house and started shooting. There were faded notices on the walls. "All departures final," one said. "An additional. Once a ticket is stamped, it is yours to keep." I assumed it was a prank or part of the local mythology. Then I noticed the board of departure. The wooden tiles with painted inscriptions were old. It was mostly blank, with the exception of one line. 11:43 p.m. is the departure time. There will be no return. Presuming that was part of the legend, I laughed. However, I noticed that it was 11:19 p.m. when I checked my watch. I had no intention of staying that long. I started to pack, but my camera was missing. Not lost, gone. Disappeared from the spot where I had just set it. The station's air grew heavier. Like an engine miles away, a deep, low hum started to develop. The station's lights then began to flicker. One by one, the platform lights came on, creating long shadows on the tracks. I swear to God. Stunned, I looked out. Then I noticed the train. Silently, a metallic, black beast rolled into the station. No brake noise. No conductor. No travelers. However, the doors opened. I ought to have fled, but I was pulled back by something about the train. I was hypnotized. I moved in closer. The inside was furnished with plush red velvet seats. Overhead, brass lanterns hung softly. There was a nameplate on each seat. Then I noticed one that bore my name. Not simply first and last, exact spelling of the middle initial. The door slammed shut as I stepped back. The train remained still. There was a hiss of steam. Then it started to slowly slide away. Pale, wide-eyed faces with mouths gaping in silent screaming were pressed against the windows as it passed me. They all appeared to be attempting to warn me, as if they were in the middle of a sentence. Then it vanished. The lights went off. I shivered as I stood there in the dark. My automobile was gone by the time I returned to town. I contacted a buddy to come get me, but he became silent when I told him what had happened. "You visited East Ravenlock," he murmured. 20 years ago, that location was destroyed by fire. Everyone is gone from within. They claimed that nobody ever saw those people again after a train arrived at the station late that evening. Later, I looked it up online. He was correct. In a local forum, a newspaper clipping was preserved. Dozens missing following mysterious blaze at abandoned station. October 17, 1993. I contrasted the names I had seen on the train window with those in the paper. A number of them matched, word for word. I never got my camera back. However, I got a package in the mail a few weeks later. No address for return. There was a picture inside. It revealed to me, stood on the platform at East Ravenlock Station, staring at the black train, just minutes before I backed away. Only I hadn't taken that photo, and there was no one else there to do it. On the back of the photo was written in smudged ink, "You were smart to step back, but not everyone gets a second chance." I don't tell this story to scare people. I tell it because I think the station still waits, still watches, and I think somewhere down that forgotten track the black train still runs its route. And if you ever find yourself at East Ravenlock near midnight, and you hear a whistle in the fog, don't look at the train. Don't step on the platform. And for God's sake, don't check if your name is on the seat. Story number 3. I was 17 when I went to Braxton Hollow Station for the first time. It was cursed, my father used to tell me, and he was the type of man who only trusted the weather report and the diesel price. Buried deep in Vermont's hills, the spur line was overgrown and had not seen a passenger train in more than 60 years. Or so they claimed. 15 years later, my employment was the sole reason I ever found myself there. For a travel magazine, I was taking pictures of abandoned hotels, asylums, and stations. Braxton Hollow was ideal. No map listings, no traffic signs, just coordinates that my editor found in an old railway ledger. After driving as far as I could, I hiked 2 miles down a corroded path that was engulfed by trees. I noticed it in the late afternoon. The platform, cracked and slippery with moss, protruding from the weeds like a stone tongue. The roof of the station house was decaying and sagging. Above the door, there was still one sign that was almost readable. Braxton Hollow EST 1887. I ought to have felt victorious. My stomach twisted instead. The stillness changed as soon as I stepped onto the platform. The wind ceased. There was silence in the woods. Listening, not dead. I had my tripod ready and started taking pictures. There was a broken ticket counter, a dusty timetable on the wall, and a lone wooden bench inside the station house. The mud on the floor had footprints in it. Not new. It was too obvious how long this place had allegedly been deserted. The signal shed was half buried in ivy when I strolled around the building. Outside, the signal light flashed red. Next, green. Then red once more. Power was non-existent. At 5:42 p.m., I looked at my watch and made the decision to head out before dark. When I heard the distant, regular chugging of an engine, I began to move down the tracks. The volume increased. I noticed a light piercing the trees as I turned around. I went cold. There was a train approaching. Although it was impossible, it was real. 5 cars were being pulled by a black iron engine that was creeping out of the trees. There was a faint amber glow in each window. It sputtered to a halt in front of me, the engine hissing steam. The doors opened smoothly. No conductor. No travelers. I was immobile as I stood there with my heart pounding. The voice then came to me. It originated in the closest vehicle. The voice of a woman, whispering, addressing me by name. I staggered backward, dropping my bag. My legs resisted the need to run that my instincts demanded. I saw a tall, slender, swinging shadow move behind the closest window. Its face was jammed to the glass. It had black gaps for eyes. The The door then banged. The train remained still. With one last hiss, it started rolling back and vanished into the trees. The sound of the wheels diminished as the jungle engulfed them. Snatching up my gear, I took off. I continued to run till I got to my car, my heart pounding. I did not turn around. I turned on my camera and looked at the pictures in the motel that evening. Colors bled and shapes stretched in every picture of the station. And the same guy appeared in the backdrop on the platform and in every shot. A man wearing the outfit of a conductor, observing me. My car keys were missing when I woke up the following morning. My phone is dead. There was a ticket on the desk. An actual vintage train ticket. One that is impossible to imitate. Stated, "End of Braxton Hollow. Coach, Shadow." The time is 6:06 p.m., non-refundable. I ran out of town, leaving everything behind. Weeks went by. Months after. However, the ticket keeps coming up again. In the pocket of my jacket. Within my mailbox. Once nestled under my pillow. Additionally, every day when I check the time, my heart skips a beat when I see that it is 6:06 p.m. Because I hear it again at that point. That distant chugging, low and eerie. I am also aware that the train is approaching. I might not be quick enough one day. I might not be able to resist getting on board one day. And once I do, I know that I will not be returning. Story number 4. At Holloway Junction, Victor walked off the platform into chilly sheets of rain, his boots splattering into a tiny pool that had gathered near the tracks. Decades ago, the station was a busy stop, although it had long since been abandoned and removed from official maps. However, there were whispers among local rail workers about phantom trains that continued to pass through Holloway without ever stopping unless summoned. Victor's presence was not accidental. Midnight was scribbled in faded ink on a handwritten note that had been pushed under his apartment door the morning before, inviting him to be there. Junction of Holloway. Come by yourself. He passed rusting benches and broken lights as he made his way the entire length of the abandoned platform. The brick walls had been overtaken by vines, which were spreading like veins across faded 1980s posters. A sign that said, "Next train, Harrow's End," fluttered in the wind atop a decaying timetable. There was no time, no schedule. Only a place that was no longer marked on any map. A distant rumble reverberated through the darkness at exactly midnight. The ancient tracks shivered. Victor raised his head. A train. Like a silver snake, it slithered out of the shadows, too smooth for something that had been forgotten. Its windows flickered with light. As it got closer, it slowed, steaming like a beast gasping for air. No conductor or passengers were in sight. The doors opened smoothly. After a brief moment of hesitation, Victor boarded. The train smelt of rot and lavender inside. The wood paneling on the walls appeared to have been polished just the day before, but the corners were cracked and wet. The aisle was lined with gaslight-style sconces that flickered softly. There was nothing in the automobile. Boots reverberated off the floor as he stepped forward. A child's high-pitched, inappropriate laughter could be heard out in the distance. Victor whirled. Nobody. He went by a number of automobiles, each representing a distinct era. One had elaborate draperies and soft velvet seats, reminiscent of the 1920s. Another was like the 1970s, all olive green and broken plastic. Cold metal and harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he got into the last car. The train then lurched ahead. He grabbed a post for support as he stumbled. Outside, the windows revealed nothing but blackness. No cities, not a single station, not even trees, nothing except emptiness. At the far end of the vehicle, a man emerged. A female. She was as pale as milk, had damp hair, and wore a conductor's hat that was lowered over her face. She had blue lips. Victor took a step back. Pointing straight at him, the woman lifted a finger. A low murmur, not a scream but something deeper, filled the car as her mouth opened. A tremor. He spun around and took off running. Each automobile was colder than the last, and as he ran, doors between them crashed open on their own. The ducts in the ceiling hissed steam. Footsteps reverberated on the train's metal roof somewhere above him. Dusty and undisturbed, He rushed into the dining car. In the corner, a gramophone played softly. Plates remained in place, as though a dinner had been halted. Only when he noticed the mirror did he stop. It cracked down the middle and hung on the far wall. He was not alone in the reflection. A dozen figures were standing behind him. They were travelers from a different era, all with mouths and eyes sewed shut, and all wore fading railway uniforms. They screamed silently, their faces frozen. He whirled around. There was nothing in the automobile. He glanced again, though, and saw them in the mirror, closer this time. He stumbled over a fallen chair as he retreated. The lights above him blew out, one by one, as the train began to shudder violently. A siren screamed from somewhere in the distance. Then everything stopped. Total silence. When he opened his eyes, the train had come to a halt. He stood slowly. The doors opened with a hiss. Outside was Harrow's End, a station that didn't belong to the living. The platform was twisted, molten metal, bones where the benches previously stood. Skeletons, some holding old suitcases, sagged along the walls. Shadows flickered beneath the platform like they had lives of their own. Victor stepped out. In a second, the train behind him was gone, silent and dark. His heart thumping, he glanced about. A light blinked on from the far end of the station. A little kiosk. He walked slowly up, skeletal fingers tapping against the counter. A ticket clerk sat behind the glass. It grinned as it glanced up with empty sockets. It rasped, "Transfer." Victor was mute. He gave a nod. A slip of parchment was pushed under the window by the clerk. All it said was, "One way. Remain seated. Do not talk to the travelers." Silent as death, a new train came. Victor got on board. This one was packed with people who had lost their humanity. Waxy skin, blank faces, and motionless bodies. Everyone is looking straight forward. He sat down in the only available seat. The train withdrew. Nobody said anything. On the back of his neck, however, he could feel the icy breath of the stitched-mouth creatures behind him. And something huge waited far ahead, through the dense fog on the tracks. It had been waiting all along. The train was never late either.